what does being filled with the Spirit mean? Does it mean that you get more of God's Spirit? Well, of course not. You've already got all of God's Spirit. He took up residence within you at the point of salvation, and you're not getting any more of God's Spirit. You're complete. You're lacking nothing. You're blessed with every spiritual blessing. You have everything you need for life and godliness. So what does it mean to be filled with the Spirit? After all, the Apostle Paul tells us to do so right there in the book of Ephesians. In chapter 5, he says, "Don't be drunk with wine, but be filled with God's Spirit." What is that all about? Well, if you back up 2 chapters, you find out. That's right, context really helps here. The Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians 3 that he's praying for the Ephesians, that he wants them to know how wide and how deep and how long and how high is the love of God, the ginormous love of Jesus Christ. And if they come to know this love, they will be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. So there you have it. It's the same verbiage. Filled to the measure of the fullness of God. How? By knowing the size of God's love for them. That's what Paul was praying for. So then you fast forward 2 chapters to Ephesians chapter 5, and he's telling them, don't be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. So I would ask you, what do wine and God's love have to do with each other? Well, think about it. Why do people gravitate toward too much wine? Why do people find themselves addicted to alcohol? They're trying to soothe their pain. They're trying to calm their nerves. They're looking for a place of refuge, right? An escape. Well, isn't that exactly what love does for us? When you find out you're loved, it soothes you. It helps you. It's a place of refuge, an escape to someone who truly knows you and loves you no matter what. And so the Apostle Paul is saying, don't look to a liquid when you're in pain. Don't look to a liquid to satisfy your deepest needs. Look to the love of Jesus Christ. And as you get to know how wide and how deep His love is for you, you will be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. That's not about getting more of God's Spirit. That's allowing the love of God to motivate and inspire you from within. It's like a Pepsi bottle, a 2-liter bottle with a cap on it. If I start shaking that bottle profusely, well, what happens? Does it get more Pepsi inside? No. But as it's stirred up on the inside, you might see all kinds of fizzing, maybe even some overflowing. That's precisely what we're talking about. We have all of God's Spirit that we need. But as we focus on the great love of Christ, we start sensing that activity within us. We're inspired and motivated by His love, and that love begins to overflow to other people. So maybe you've wondered about the book of Acts. All those times that this phrase, filled with the Spirit, appears in the book of Acts. What's that about? It's simply saying, and Peter, inspired by the great love of Christ, said. And people who were waiting on tables and serving others, they were inspired by the deep and long and high, the love of Christ and the ginormous nature of God's unconditional love for them. They knew the love of Jesus, and that's what inspired them to be hospitable and to serve others and to defend the gospel and to deliver sermons. Filled with the Spirit, it simply means to be inspired by the great love of Jesus Christ.